Right there. Uh, I've written, I'm a history major besides being a racing fanatic, and I've written 3 books on Grand National racing. And there's nothing I like better than what I would call a flat track mystery and solving a flat track mystery. And I've found people that, guys, what send me a note and say, hey, whatever happened to this guy or this girl that raced? And some of these things have taken me 4 or 5 years to finally meet somebody and do a story and have it published. But I had a guy from West Coast ask me. He said, "You ever heard of a guy named Scott Erickson?" And he originally thought he was from Colorado, and it didn't ring a bell with me at all. But I had written a book about Ascot Park and the results at Ascot Park, and leafing through those, I see Scott's name. Turned out he's from Montana. Scott's name at Ascot Park at the season opener novice class in 1972, and Scott won that week, and he also he was second the week after. So I started digging around more, and found out that from Montana, which is a wasteland for just about any kind of racing, Scott traveled all over the country, but he went to Daytona in 1972 to the short track. And racing was booming then. There would have been hundreds of novices there. But Scott, he won that night in that field, and we have some of the guys here tonight. Some of the guys that Scott beat was Steve Moorhead, Ricky Campbell, Tony DiStefano, Mike Hartwig, Ray Chappell. We're talking big names in racing. That was March 8th, 1972. And then a month later, he went to the Ascot Park Ascot Park season opener, the half mile, and beat those guys. First non-Californian to ever win a novice race from out of state. But the guys out there, the hot guys there, Rick Hawkins, John Genai, Hank Scott, and a number of hot shoes. But through Facebook, which has its good parts and bad parts, I was able to hook up with Scott. But I wanted to bring him up here because I think he has a great story. He seemed like he came up and was the hottest novice prospect in America in 1972, and then to most people it seemed like he disappeared. So I'd like to just have him kind of describe his trips to Daytona, his trip to Ascot Park, and why he moved on from racing. He was a pilot at a young age. I think his grandfather was a pilot, and he pursued a career in aviation. But definitely one of those what if questions. If you beat Steve Moorhead, Ricky Campbell, Rick Hawking, those guys like that, you got the talent to be a world-class racer. And I just wanted to get Scott here. He drove in. He's got the long distance award. I guarantee you. He drove in from Nebraska. His brother, which is sitting right front here, came from Montana to ride in with him. So please welcome Scott Erickson, please.
What are you doing in Nebraska?
Airplanes brought me to Nebraska. But it's been a pleasure and an honor to ever be involved in motorcycle racing. We did have, on a real low level compared to you guys, racing, actually weekly racing at Billings. And for my growth, it probably was about right because I was quite challenged there for some time. Actually, my breakthrough came when a guy I really looked up to critiqued me and said I used the brakes too much and to take them off and just leave them in Lewistown where you can't put them back on your bike. And with a two-cycle with no compression release, it was like selecting neutral. And I went from emergency to emergency. I survived the turn, but he was correct. It did teach me how to handle my motorbike, and I kind of became a sort of almost a militant anti-brake guy. Well, if Res Weber didn't need brakes, why do I? You know, kind of person, because I was, all this is in my head and in the magazines and the books. There is no contact there, so I, you know, I learned about all of you people, and you know, practically worshipped at your altar of all the great names through publications and just studying it. For example, and this is probably going beyond the scope, but it might be interesting to somebody. If there was ever a picture in Motorcycle Weekly or anything of a start finish where it's at a 90-degree angle, I'd take that picture and take it down to the machine shop where you had an optical comparator and blow it up and scale it and find out every dimension and have a notebook. And I'd know Sammy Tanner's and you know everybody's dimensions, their rake, their trail, their crankshaft height, their wheelbase, so you know, I just was a heavy participant from observer participant from a distance, and a heavy enthusiast, and eventually I got to do a little bit of AMA stuff. So
awesome. If you could kind of detail your trips to Daytona, and I know you said you barely transferred in the slowest heat, but you turned that around to win that event.
Well, yeah, and really the story's longer than that. I'm sorry, but you know, I was a 2-year novice. I went there the year before on one of those yellow Bultacos, you know, the Bultaco Matisse type thing, and because a rich guy from Butte called up my parents and said, "I'm going to Daytona. I'll take your son, for free." Well, for free for people who have no money is that's like wow. So I got to go to Daytona the year before, and they had also 30 plus scratch heats, and I really liked the track. It was kind of cushiony, and which it turned out it is every year early in the night, because they haul in the dirt, you know, spread it out, make a racetrack out of it, and then haul it out at the end of it. So anyway, I was going real good in practice, and then I got in my scratch heat, and I took off, and I did the turn 1 and 2 fabulously. I got a huge lead, and as I entered turn 3, the engine quits. Well, the engine quits by what in my later career we would call pilot error. I didn't turn the fuel on. So anyway, but it was the fourth fastest scratch. It was the fourth fastest scratch heat, and I just disappeared on the guy, and then quit. So I went back to Montana, and I had all this confidence that didn't really result in anything anytime quick. But the next time I got back to Daytona, a year later, I had learned how to ride a considerably bit better. And I got down there, and I was going again really good in practice. And got real cocky and confident because, oh my goodness, you know, I'm doing these turns with gorgeous form and wide open and da-da-da, you know. And then I got in the heat race, and it was starting to groove out, and my wonderful cushion that I loved was disappearing. Yeah, and I got the 17th fastest heat race, which qualified me. You had to have 24 or quicker, but I should have realized I was in deep trouble. Yeah.
And you had to win your scratch heat just to advance in the program.
Yeah, I won it, and so my ego apparently was satisfied, and oh, you know, they must be wrong. I'm awesome, you know, but they weren't wrong, and I wasn't awesome at all, and so then it's grooved out even more for the real heat race, and the people ahead, I think I was in one of the slowest heats, but I believe the person ahead might have been Steve Moorhead. I looked at the results just yesterday, and I couldn't even see him. He's gone. he's gone, you know, half a lap ahead. I mean, I was so slow, it was unbelievable. And the guy that that I was tangling with, you know, probably got treated kind of rudely to just make the third place so that I transferred. Anyway, sorry to make that so long, but anyway, I was by far the slowest rider for the main, and not by a little bit. We're talking pathetic. And by then I realized that, you know, I'd be going to Manpower the next day to be able to fill my gas tank and stuff. And because I didn't have any money left, I did lousy at Talladega. I did lousy at, fell down at Jacksonville. It was the pre-race. And so, you know, and then I went up to the Cycle Supply in Jacksonville and bought the tires that won the race, because I thought maybe I might need, anyway. So I had no money left. And so I walk out on the track, as I always did. I walk out the track for thinking, for looking at the angle, and just I don't know, just meditating practically, and taking in the track, trying to learn something. But having been there the year before, I got to watch the amazing Ed Sally as a person in the stands, or, you know, I watched Ed Sally, this unheard of junior, unheard of to me. Okay, junior beat everybody and is the only one tangling with, was it Barry Briggs?
Barry Briggs.
On a Yamaha Twin, on a Speedway chassis, and, you know, doing this magical stuff. And of course, you know, for me, having watched this the year before, Ed Sally is this giant. And so I'm out on the track brooding over my situation, that I understand that I'm the slowest of the slowest. I am not going to get any money, no matter how this turns out. They don't pay 10th place. Okay, and so this Ed Sally comes walking up, and he's in street clothes, but I recognize him instantly. And the Dick Mann, of course, you have to remember, I read everything. And Dick Mann said, don't talk to experts. They don't want to talk to you. Use your eyeballs, and you can learn with your eyeballs. You can learn about tires. You can learn about chassis, and they talk to you. But you do not talk to experts, because they have a disinterest in you. And I think this is a direct quote that is sincere and deep-rooted. And so when Ed Sally comes walking up in street clothes, I'm going, there's something wrong with this. He looks like he's coming over to see me. And sure enough, he is. He walks up to me, and I'm just kind of frozen in disbelief and wonder what he's doing here. And he says, and you got to remember, for me, it's the voice of God when Ed Sally talks. And he says, "Oh, you know you can win this." And I turn and look at him, and then he walks up to the cushion, which is now all jammed up against this green concrete wall, and then now it's 2 or 3 times as deep, and he kicks it with his street shoes, and he says, "I saw you earlier. You love this stuff." Go. And then I look at the concrete wall and all this dirt piled up against it. And I'm going, I think you're right, but this is going to be a big job. So, and then he just walks away. That's the only words ever said. But while I have a microphone and a chance to give somebody a plug, the hero for me of that event was Ed Sally. And as a human being, let's get beyond So anyway, I go back to the pits, and I know what I need to do. I went and felt the dirt, and it had a very low shear strength and huge volume. So I knew, oh my goodness, I need Barry Briggs tires. Is what I really need. And Dunlop Trials Universals were legal, but I didn't have any. I think they were legal back then. But I took my brand new Carlisle for the back and my brand new Pirelli for the front, and it was the most radical cut anybody's probably ever seen. If you would have done this cut on a normal bike, on a normal track with normal racetrack type dirt, you would have chunked it instantly. It would have worked for 1 turn or 2 turns or 3 turns. But I realized there's no sheer strength in this. This is like racing in Montana in the snow. And it has, the only thing that gives me traction, it has huge amount of volume. My tire will scoop up this huge amount of dirt if I put enough lugs in it, deep lugs. So I did I had brand new razor blades in my little vice grip, and I just whittled out so much rubber out of those tires. I created what practically snow tires, and then from there on, it worked. But just without going into a lot of detail, it worked, and it wasn't fair. It was if I would have supplied Steve Moorhead with my exact tires, and the other guys, they probably would have disappeared. But I had a traction advantage that was unbelievable, and I went completely wide open and could have used another 20 horse. And actually I started sliding less. I could have turned and stuck it in the infield, wide open. I had so much traction. I've never seen anything like it. I started sliding less to keep my speed higher. So to be fair, when we all had the same tires on in the heat race, we found out who the good riders were. It wasn't me. But Ed Sally's the hero, and as in every way, as a human being, most of all. And yes, I deserve a bit of credit. He did notice that I handled the cushion reasonably well, and I practiced all winter. You notice that all my good results, almost without exception, were in the spring. I rode all winter, and it was 10 below zero, and the snow was this deep. I just got out my Bultaco Matador that was in my basement and rode it up the outdoor entrance stairs and went riding always, all the time. So in the spring, there was a general feeling that the other guys were kind of coming out of hibernation. So there was that advantage. And then I guess one final thing, there was a wonderful man in Billings, Montana, that funded my machines and made it possible to have a really good bike. My bike was a very, very, very good bike. I did not suffer motorcycle. If I would have had factory sponsorship, I would not have had a better bike.
Champion Bultaco.
The champion Bultaco, Doug Schwerma, worked with me on the phone, and it was a champion TD2B for Ascot, and he worked closely, probably too closely, because he the trick that I figured out because it wasn't so different at Ascot, I was not particularly fast, and then my brain came to life, and I made a major switch for the main, which gave me a huge superiority that if shared, well, the next week it was shared. Janai figured out, well, actually it wasn't Janai, it was, Doug Schwerma. Yeah, Doug Schwerma was doing Janai's bike.
So Scott won that Daytona race early March, March 7th or 8th, and then almost a month later went to the season opener at Ascot Park, the half mile, and with the Yamaha TD2 racer.
Yeah.
Which was similar to what other guys were racing out there.
Well, it was the same as what Janai had, and Doug Schwerma, of course, he created all this stuff. But he was looking my bike over, believe me, because I built all my own stuff. So it was he got there was a lot of eye candy, positive or negative, but there was a lot of stuff that was unique because I didn't have California or Ohio to teach me. I figured it out myself, and my bike was different and turned out to be quite effective. And then he noticed, well, like I said, he noticed the change, and then Janai wasn't so easy to beat the next week because they keep getting smarter.
The TD2 Yamahas were a road race engine
Yeah.
that were real radical, real narrow power band. And so the dirt track guys at Ascot were basically detuning the engine so they didn't hit so hard, that maybe had a little wider power band. I think Scott had told me that he basically left the whole powertrain alone, and his success that night was due to gearing. He learned something he said learned from Dick Mann, gearing to the track properly.
Well, you know, again, I read every word that anybody ever wrote, and one of them what somebody wrote, and I think, excuse me, was probably Dick Mann, but said to have a gearing chart. You have to have a proper gearing chart for every single gear. So I was good at math. I was good at math, and I had one. And so at Ascot, I had trouble doing the turn fast enough for fourth gear, and then I would still run out of fifth gear before the end of the straightaway. So I eventually figured out to use third and fourth, and I went in my gear chart and numerically straddled fourth and fifth. I'd probably drink of water, but
We'll get you. I'll run get you water. I'll be right back.
But anyway, it worked absolutely wonderful. Now I suddenly had a Voltaco in the turns and a rocket ship down the straightaway. And again, if I would have, we proved it the next week. And I was using third and fourth the next week, and I didn't win anymore. So, anyway. But the problem too was that you got $40 to win, and I think it was 20 for second. And I realized things were cheaper then, but even with 29.9 gas, $20 didn't go very far, and you had to get groceries and stuff. So it was a very difficult time financially. And eventually I had to go back to the Midwest so I could make some money in the outlaw races. So. Oh yeah, I think I recovered, but I suppose the other good thing that came out of going to California and join the AMA stuff is I got to eventually try road racing, and I'd never road raced at all before, and I ended up really liking road racing. I suspect I was a probably better road racer than probably dirt tracker. Who knows for sure. It was fun though. If you did like Daytona, where you have a huge advantage, it was kind of fun to go execute on it. Again, if I would have supplied tires for the entire field, it would have been a more interesting race, and might have not come out on top probably. But.
Scott had a lot of success.
Scott had a lot of success early in his career, but he also was a pilot at an early age. And when there wasn't, money is all about cubic dollars. And when he didn't have, okay. When he didn't have sponsors forthcoming, I think he started looking for another way to make a living that was exciting and fun, and it was a natural thing for you to get into the aviation side of it.
Well, for sure, and I started riding in my grandpa's airplane when I was maybe 6 years old, and he was handy about giving you the controls and seeing what you could do. In fact, he was probably a little over the top on that, but I don't hardly remember him ever driving a car because from the earliest age he'd put us in his lap and have us drive. So he was definitely a strong influence. And one other person I probably should give some wonderful credit to was there's a guy in Stover, Missouri, that had a little Yamaha shop and a repair shop for the whole community. The only repair shop. Anyway, it was a guy named Abbott, Lewis Abbott. And I was at Daytona riding a 250 for a California dealer, and who didn't really do the proper prep work on it, and anyway, it quit. My bike quit. I was going good, but my bike didn't finish. So, and then I didn't do that great on the dirt tracking, and we separated. And I had nowhere to go, and Atlanta was coming up, the Road Race National Atlanta, and so I called up this Lewis Abbott and said, well, and his rider was actually kind of slow, but he would go home and brag that we got 60th place, and there was 120 there, and it's the biggest race in the world, and he was just this happy man that would just be happy about anything, really. He's a wonderful, wonderful human being. Anyway, so I call him up and I said, well, is your guy riding at Atlanta? And he said, well, no, he's doing field work. And I said, oh, okay, can I ride your bike at Atlanta? And he said, well, okay, yeah, sure. So I went up to Stover, Missouri, and prepped the bike, pulled the exhaust pipes in a little tighter so you could lean over a little bit better, and just a few little rider nuances while he was working on the engine, doing the scheduled maintenance, which most people apparently didn't do, but he actually read the manual and did all the scheduled maintenance. So we get to Atlanta, and for the first time, I have a 250 that doesn't get passed all the time, and it finishes. And anyway, I end up getting second. And I love that Atlanta track, and that's another story. But anyway, I get second on Lewis Abbott's bike, and more of the point for me is that I got to know a wonderful man that he understood what happened not at the event. He understood when he took the bike apart, and see, he'd been replacing all these mandatory parts that were not needing replacement at all with his prior rider. Now he's taken it apart, and when it said to put new brakes in, the brakes were shot. And and he realized this, and then he started saying, I think you need to go back to college. Because he wasn't comfortable with it, and then he saw all these scrape marks on the bike.
He was not wanting you to get hurt.
Yeah, he was right, and he saw rubber marks on the back on the tailpiece, and he's just like going, I think you need to go to college. You need to go back to college. This is not a good idea. But anyway, he was a wonderful guy, and we did pretty good. Actually, the last time I rode for him, and I think probably the last time I rode for him was the Junior Expert Lightweight Combined at Daytona the next year. Or, I was a junior. And I got 7th. And, let's not worry about people. I actually analyzed my race as different than the worrying about how the world analyzed them. Like, if I did really good, I'd study it and decide what I really did. Well, this is one where nobody noticed 7th place, but I was the first junior, and I was the first air-cooled. And air-cooled versus a water-cooled at Daytona on a 250. is enormous, and it was probably one of the best rides I've ever done. And I think I was riding on the level. Well, I mean, it's a pretty boring track, other than turn 3. Other than turn 3, it's kind of a stop and go and a bunch of real easy turns. But I was doing turn 3 like only a couple of people were doing, and so that's why I got 7th.
Well, good deal. I'm so glad you managed to come and see us. I think you said it's probably the first dirt track event you've been to in 40 years, and a heck of a trip to come in from Nebraska. It's great that you brought your brother, and I just thought it would be really neat for you to come and get reintroduced to the sport, and a few more people get to know you. And we're so glad that you guys came.
Well, it's an honor and a pleasure to be the whole time clear back to the 60s to be involved with you folks, and I look up to all of you because you're all faster than me. We had a couple lucky moments where I had tires and you didn't. So what? I beat you.
It was really cool to see you and Moorhead talking last night.
Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure to me. For me.
Good deal. Well, enjoy the rest of the day, and thanks so much for coming up, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Scott Erickson, everybody. Next, I'd like to have Norbert Raw and Jim Wetzel.